My story is not yet done because I own the trust property and the county commissioner is still trespassing on it. So I need to have some authority evict him so I can, take possession of my property. And the money my brother stole from the trust is hidden in an Oregon corporation. About $621,000 that I've documented, and who knows what else they did. But they were mean to my mother and abused her and that sort of thing. But it was all documented in the court. But I was the recorded successee to my mother after she passed, and that made me the settler of the trust. Now I could have recovered the property and the money through the court had it been a legitimate court. But back in eastern Montana, I was blocked by the clerk of courts. She's used this court for money laundering and title fraud. I now have the evidence of it. And this has been going on for 9 years. And then she deprived me of legal counsel. Any lawyer in Montana that wanted to represent me got threatened that she was going to put them out of business if they came there. My requests for appearances were repeatedly denied. So they did whatever they wanted to without my voice. There were 3 bankers involved who overrode the recorded protection document that the signature of my mother is not valid without mine. My brothers, when my mother was 90 years old, they forced her to sign for a loan by telling her that she was going to starve to death in 2 days. They would slam her up against the wall and make her sign things and that sort of thing. But I had that recorded protection document, and the bankers decided to overlook it. So my mother signed the loan. They forced her to, but it was not valid because my signature wasn't there. Then later on, in 2017, my brothers deed the properties to themselves, which they had no business doing, and recorded third-party side deal to the sons of the county commissioner. The bankers made up the lie that I owed them $44,000. They threatened me with foreclosure, and then they sold the illegal promissory note to my brothers with the help of another corrupt attorney. The last thing that's happened here recently is they scheduled a hearing. So I asked the judge over the district if I could have telephonic appearance, from Arizona to Montana with this pandemic. So they denied me. They all knew that I was suffering from breast cancer. Wouldn't it have been great if I would have died? They could have pulled this whole thing off and no one even know. I'm now 80 years old. The loss of the trust is $3 million plus. These people need to be prosecuted for the crimes they have committed. Hopefully the state of Montana does the right thing now. So, the reason I'm telling my story is I want the public to know that these corrupt people in the court system are a threat to our precious American judicial system. And we need to, anybody that's been hurt like I have been, through a court system, that sort of thing, we need to speak up and stand together and defend our rights. It's so easy for people to prey on older people, especially now where they're doing title fraud. People don't even know that it's happening to them till their property is gone. I've learned that you have to be persistent because it's been 9 years and I've been complaining to agencies in the state of Montana. Save every bit of piece of paper that you've got on your property. So I just say, and then don't get involved in, money transfers and, don't fall for scams. Anytime something says it's free, nothing in life is free. In my case, too, a lot of it is sibling things. Remember that the little kids that you walk to Sunday school with, when they grow up and your parents pass away, they're not the same people that you knew when you were kids. So forget that. My brothers were so mean to my mother. The last 5 years of her life, I could not believe it. I was so helpless. I couldn't do anything. The main thing to remember, if you do get scammed or something happens to you like that, don't blame yourself. You're not to blame. And you're not alone. There's a lot of people. You just speak up.
Hello, my father was a victim of elder abuse. He died a very painful way. It was through a family member who had the power of attorney. There is a big danger when you can have what happened with my father is my sister hired an attorney, and together they wrote up a power of attorney, which gave my father, among other things, my sister immediate access to all of his finances where she didn't have to run it by him. And after she had that ability to then work through his banks and the brokerages, she then had a lot of the mailings of his financial records go directly to her. So he, at that point, she started having it where he never got to see what was happening in his bank. What happened about 2 years after that, when this came to light that what was going on, is he fell and went from independent living to needed a more restrictive care, an environment where there was a young girl, actually in her 20s, was taking care of two other seniors. And my father and I had discussed just prior to that, and he was very excited. He was planning on, he was going to be moving back here to the state that he had been from and that family was, and be back with us again. The next day, when my sister found this out, she immediately went to his doctor, informed the doctor he had anxiety and depression, and got medications. When I called up Adult Protective Service and even tried to reach him, he was too drugged up. My sister now neither allowed me or my mother, who was still close to him, but they were like legally divorced. Neither of us were allowed to have contact. And when I had Adult Protective Service, they said he was so incoherent. My sister told him he had advanced dementia. And they said he was so out of it, they didn't even think he would have the ability to remember a family member. This is how drugged up he was. And for making the reports about what was going on, again, they couldn't, no agency could do anything, and all they had was her elaborate stories, made up elaborate stories, because she had to hide the secret that she had been embezzling large amounts of money. And the agencies started even believing her. And they couldn't hear anything I said. They couldn't believe we would have conversations or that he wanted to come back because he was too incoherent. So to make a long story short, she was able to use, through all of her lies, make elaborate stories and have it where I was not allowed to see my father. When a senior, a power of attorney, when they have the ability to use the senior's money to hire high-priced attorneys, and this is, I think, what many people have faced, if they try to free their family member or help them, the power of attorney who's abusing them has the power to hire legal representation. And this is one thing we need to stop, that we need to all stand together to stand up against elder abuse. Thank you.
I think it's a rampant, insidious problem in this country right now. First off, I have two victims, my elderly parents. I'm also now a senior at 62. What I found out is there is a definite problem in this country, and it isn't just greed for financial situations. We have also an epidemic of mentally ill people who want to control and use power over vulnerable adults, just like pedophiles or child abusers do to people. Now, my experience is I turned my parents' elder abuse, which is really greater than that. It's human rights abuses, into the state of Nevada Aging Services, and 5 or 6 of them, and nobody ever followed up, and nobody ever went to their home to check their condition. And also, the local police department would not even do elderly welfare check for me. This went on for years and years, and I finally, once again, filed a police report in 2020 to finally get over there that this is human rights abuse. They're imprisoned in that home by my mentally ill brother. They're also socially isolated. They're also have denial of access to medical care. Anyway, I filed that report April of 2020, and about 10 days later, I got some phony phone call that my father, was suddenly deceased. And the manipulation that I went through with these people was a phony death certificate, a phony coroner's report, and everything else was phony. And this was my biggest tip. I checked around the FBI and the Department of Justice, make sure there was no Medicare billing charges. And this can be Medicaid or it can be standard health insurance. If there is no billing for decades or years, you know something's wrong and that it's a pack of lies. And that's what happened in my case. But my big tip is, if you suspect any elder abuse and people say, oh, we took them to the hospital or to the clinic or they were picked up by EMS ambulance, check Medicare billing. That'll tell you the whole truth. And it certainly did. And it is corruption in this northern Nevada. And so that's basically my story. I'm still waiting for follow-up. I've done everything. I even went to our state's attorney general, and hopefully he's working on this situation. It's been a tremendous situation, and like I said prior, it surpasses elder abuse. It's human rights abuses in this country, and I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm going to take it to the SCOTUS of the United States and force these people arrested. My parents are dead from murder. There wasn't any illness. There wasn't any other accident. And I proved it with Medicare billing charges. So that's my story. I think number one is watch yourself closely. If you have anybody living in your home that are relatives, make sure you absolutely know that they're not mentally ill or on drugs and alcohol. The big issue is with my brother, he was greedy all of his life, so there was financial abuse, horribly. And that's the main thing. And then also friends. It's nice to have somebody, knock on your door or phone you and say, is there anything you want me to do? Well, that's nice one or two times, but if it becomes a repetitious issue and you find things missing or there's money stolen or your checkbook or your credit card, that's really huge. You just can't allow these people into your home. And I know elderly people can be lonely, so this makes them more vulnerable, especially if you have a con artist saying, oh, sweetie, I'll help you do this or that. That is the big problem. I wish, and it may have already happened, but we need lobbyists in Washington to make them aware of this situation. The big deal right now is all the immigration, and we're finishing up with COVID. But they just can't drop everything else in this country that's wrong. And like I said, it is mental health problems and other issues like that. We just don't have enough support.
Last May, we lost my 99-year-old father to COVID-19, but we had been losing him for the past 6 years to mental confusion and decline, and to the influence of a new family who came into his life when he married again at age 93, an exploitation that we continue to experience. What our family experienced as the progressive and profound overthrow of my father's mind, will, emotions, and devotion is not considered abuse. if the elder himself complies with or denies the exploitation. Our family's loss of my father's trust and promises to us can be described as just bad luck because of new choices he freely made in the 10th decade of his life, or as something more obvious and pernicious, although easier denied than taken seriously and investigated. My father had been a widower for 2.5 years, living independently in a retirement community in Pennsylvania, when he married again at age 93 to another resident of the community. His new wife was 96, had 4 adult children, and was financially independent. I was my father's only living child and heir. Despite living 1,500 miles away in Texas, I was close to my father and was named as his primary beneficiary in his will and in all his life insurance policies. I was also named as his executor and power of attorney, with my husband named as trustee. In fact, in the months before his third marriage at age 93, my father voluntarily assured me that nothing in his or the new wife's wills would change, although my father's behaviors towards our family began to change within the first year of marriage. Only once did my father ever call me for help, demanding to know what was happening to his money, which was disappearing. When I flew up to Pennsylvania to investigate, he quickly denied any problems at all. Nonetheless, I discovered several disturbing documents that contradicted all my father's promises to me and our family, changes he denied when I asked him about them. Within the first 10 months of this new marriage in their 90s, my father and his new wife had drawn up new wills, setting up a trust for the new wife, making her primary in his will. My father had changed his attorney to the attorney used by the new wife and her family. He removed me as executor, removed my husband as trustee, replacing us with the professionals used by the new family, including the family's accountant. When I questioned my father about these changes, he denied them outright, although I had now seen the new documents. Within a week after arriving home in Texas, I received a letter from my father's new attorney, revoking my power of attorney. Years later, I discovered that he named his 98-year-old wife as his primary agent, replacing me. Over time, I discovered that my father also moved all his investments over to the accountant used by the new wife and her family, and eventually commingled his bank accounts with the new wife, controlled by her middle daughter. At my father's death, I discovered that I had been replaced by his new wife as primary beneficiary on his largest life insurance policy. The official story is that my father independently changed his mind when he married again at 93, and freely made all these changes to take care of his new wife. The official story, of course, completely misses what was happening in my father's mind and emotional life. My father's elderly wife was not only not capable of acting as his agent, his wife's middle daughter had been managing her mother's affairs for many years. Much later, I discovered that early in the marriage, this stepdaughter to my father began managing my father as well, making both financial and medical decisions for him, and distancing him from me. Although I sensed the stepdaughter's incursion and felt her pushback, I had no clear idea in those early years how extensive her control and influence would become. My father, now 97, and his wife, now 100, had been living together in independent living for 4 years when a crisis occurred. The retirement facility insisted on moving my father into the secure memory unit for his well-being and safety, and the stepdaughter threatened the facility with a lawsuit not to move my father there. But by this time, my father's cognitive decline was so serious that the facility director and medical staff ignored the stepdaughter's threats and moved my father into memory care anyway. Confronted by the stepdaughter's dangerous interference in my father's life, the director of the facility advised me to petition for guardianship, since my father had revoked my power of attorney 3 years earlier. When the stepdaughter, the accountant, and the attorney learned of my intentions to obtain guardianship, they moved quickly to make the stepdaughter my father's legal agent. Despite my father's placement in the secure memory unit and testing as incapacitated on the basic mental inventory, the stepdaughter, accountant, and attorney persuaded my father to sign a new power of attorney document, assigning the stepdaughter as his legal acting agent. The facility director was alarmed and immediately notified me, and I, in turn, notified the county ombudsman and Adult Protective Services to investigate, as well as notified the county DA's office for suspected abuses, including financial exploitation. Although the ombudsman seemed alarmed, APS visited my father and reported that he was fine to sign legal documents and reassign his agency to his stepdaughter, even though he was in secure memory care. The DA's office told me that I lacked enough evidence to make any case, despite the fact that the medical director of the facility provided a deposition attesting to my father's complete incapacity to make coherent decisions. For me to challenge this further, or to continue my position for guardianship, would require an elder law attorney, along with the unlimited funds and stamina, to launch a difficult legal contest against the stepdaughter and her professional team, who were already so many steps ahead, and proven experts at managing my elderly father and his wife. The spend-down of his wealth accelerated, and questionable expenditures were made, ostensibly to benefit the new stepdaughter's mother, his wife. I had no legal standing, authority, or access to request real information. Anything I learned was incidental or shared with me by the director of the facility because she believed me, did not trust the wife's stepdaughter, and feared for my father's welfare. But it was always too little, too late. While all of the changes my father made can and have been explained away as his free will choice to take care of his new elderly wife, this easy explanation entirely misses the overbearing and undue influence of a new family who came in at the end of his life. Across the past 6 years, I have observed too many red flags and suspicious patterns to name here, including behavioral, emotional, and cognitive changes in my father, which placed him squarely in the category of highest vulnerability and risk for exploitation. My father's being turned from fidelity and trust in us, his family of 6 decades, to distrust of us and complete dependence on a new family and their advisors in the 10th decade of his life, is the most salient sign and devastating consequence of the exploitations that occurred after his marriage at 93 until the day of his death at 99 to COVID-19. Incredibly, the exploitations did not end with my father's death, but continue to this day. Our family not only lost our father's once unbreakable trust in us, but we have also lost out on our unpromised inheritance. Meanwhile, my father's wealth, what is left of it, is still being managed by his stepdaughter, who has been given exclusive and unlimited access to it. While the harms my father and our family experienced are real and ongoing, my reports of suspected abuse and my displacement by this new family as my father's heir, agent, and protector were never considered serious enough to investigate.
Hi, my name is Anna Poblet-Kochi, and I am the project coordinator at Ageless Alliance. We are a nonprofit grassroots organization turning voices into action to end elder abuse. The stories you just heard were shared by some of our members who wanted to talk about their experience in honor of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. We are so grateful for their bravery and for their willingness to speak out about these difficult experiences. In my work at Ageless Alliance, I've had the privilege of speaking to these individuals and many others who have reached out to us wanting support and wanting to talk about what happened to them or their family member. And while it's been very difficult to hear some of these stories, many of them, I actually feel inspired by these individuals because of their commitment to tackling this difficult issue. Instead of giving up, they're reaching out, they're calling agencies, they're trying every avenue to seek justice for themselves or for their loved ones who were affected by elder abuse. And I think that's the resolve that we all need to address this issue. Elder abuse is complex, and as you can see from these stories, a lot of it involves family members. Family members are often the perpetrators, sadly, in many elder abuse cases, which makes it so incredibly difficult. But we can't give up just because it's complex. We can't stop trying to take action on this issue. We need to equip ourselves with knowledge. And I hope that these stories help you understand more about this topic and how it happens. I think by preparing ourselves and understanding the complexities, we can actually prevent it together by building awareness, by looking out for older adults in our community, by promoting policies that protect older adults from abuse and exploitation. I hope that you'll join us in building awareness of elder abuse this World Elder Abuse Awareness Day by sharing this video with your family and friends. Together we can end elder abuse. Thank you.